Have you ever been stalked by your own family? The police said my stepbrother drowned in the storm. His journal says he's been watching me sleep for months after. Elijah had supposedly died 6 months ago when his car went off the bridge. They never found his body, which didn't seem strange since the river was flooded. But then I started hearing rhythmic tapping from somewhere in the house. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3 again. It happened every night, always stopping when I tried to find the source. The pattern nagged at me until I realized what it was. Sweet Caroline, his favorite song. The tapping made me realize I had to know whether he was really gone. When I lifted his mattress, I found a small leather notebook wedged against the wall. The moment I opened it, my stomach clenched. He'd written about watching me on moving day, how my legs looked in shorts, how he'd saved tissues from my trash because they smelled like my shampoo. Each entry got worse. He documented my shower schedule, described touching himself while listening to the water run. He wrote about taking photos of my body while I slept, watching me change through heating vents. My hands shook when I saw the date on the last page. 3 days ago. 3 days after he'd supposedly been dead for 6 months. I dropped the notebook and stumbled toward the door. I spent the entire day trying to convince myself I'd misread the dates. But when I finally checked my room that evening, the notebook sat on my pillow with a fresh white rose and new pages filled with wet ink. He'd written about how perfect my room would be for both of us, how he'd been sneaking food from my plate, tasting my saliva when he licked the fork after I'd used it. I couldn't stand having this thing in my house for another second. I threw it into the fireplace, watching every page curl and blacken. But an hour later, it sat on my kitchen table next to warm cookies that smelled like vanilla and something medicinal. The new entry explained that fire wouldn't work because our love was eternal. He'd baked the cookies with sleeping pills he'd been grinding into my food for weeks. That's why I'd been waking up exhausted with my pajamas twisted. That's when I knew for certain he was alive and watching my every move. The discoveries kept getting worse each day. Photographs of me sleeping tucked inside my textbooks, taken from different angles. In some, I could see his hand reaching toward my face. When I found my laptop open to a wedding planning website with our names at the top, I knew he was planning something final. The countdown timer showed 1 day remaining. Each morning brought more evidence of his nighttime visits. I'd wake up groggier, my pajamas sometimes missing entirely. New bruises appeared on my arms and legs. The notebook kept appearing with detailed entries describing these visits, how my skin felt under his hands, how I'd moan his name in my sleep, how he'd been practicing wedding night positions while I was unconscious. The final entry made my stomach twist violently. He wrote about how proud he was of my transformation, how I'd lost weight from stress, how my skin had turned pale. He called it my bridal glow and described how perfect I'd look walking down the basement stairs in white. That night I found the notebook on my pillow one last time, surrounded by white rose petals. He'd written about watching me read his previous entries, how beautiful I looked when I was scared. The final page contained a detailed wedding dress sketch with measurements that matched my body exactly. Underneath, "Turn around, my love, it's time." The floorboard creaked behind me, and every muscle in my body went rigid. Elijah's voice was softer than I remembered when he said, "I came back for our wedding day. I couldn't stay dead when I had you to live for." I turned around slowly. The room was dim, but I could see his outline clearly. He looked exactly the same as 6 months ago, except his skin was too pale and his clothes smelled like damp earth. He held white roses and wore a black suit that looked like it had been buried and dug up. "You're supposed to be dead," I whispered. Elijah held up a second notebook and said, "Death is just a minor inconvenience when you have true love waiting. This one contains our wedding vows and everything you'll be promising me in a few hours." He sat down close enough that I could smell the roses mixed with something putrid. His voice stayed calm when he said, "You look perfect now, exactly how a bride should look. When we exchange vows in the basement at sunrise, you'll promise to love me forever." He leaned closer and whispered, "I never really died, sweetheart. I've been living in the basement this whole time, preparing everything, preparing you. Your body's ready now. You've been taking my medicine, sleeping deeply, letting me practice with you for months." He opened the thick notebook, revealing pages of handwritten vows and detailed drawings. His voice turned eager when he said, "You've been such a good student in your sleep. Now let's see how well you've learned to love me back."